Welcome back. This is Doug and Cindy with Help Me Help Momma Livecast. Thanks for joining us again today. And we're going to be going over a few of your questions and comments. If you have questions, please feel free to put them on our Facebook page or our blog at helpmehelpmama.com. And we'll try to answer a few of them during our time today. And make sure also to share this with someone that you think could benefit from this. All right, Cindy, you want to kick us off with the first one?
Okay. One of the questions we got was, how do you know when mom and dad need help? You know, they're not going to just tell you. Mine never did. So it's kind of going to be up to you to notice when things start changing. I encourage people to look in 4 primary areas. Their vision, because when you can't see, it makes things a whole lot harder, and you need help during doing specific tasks. Their cognitive ability, can they carry on a conversation? Do they used to call you every day or once a week, and has that changed? You start noticing if their behavior is changing. Finances, you need to be aware of their finances. I know a lot of people don't like to share their finances.
You know, and it's something, especially finances, is something that seniors, particularly that generation, has held close to their chest their whole life. I mean, they
went through the Depression.
They went through the Depression. A lot of them did go through the Depression, and they're
hanging on to everything, protecting it, guarding it. They don't know that they don't need to guard it from their children.
And you know, sometimes the truth is they've done a lot better with their money than their kids have. You know, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's just the opposite of that. But whatever the reason, and sometimes it's just pride, sometimes it's they just don't want to tell you. But it is important to get information as to where things are, where the accounts are. At least if you can find out where they are, that will help a lot down the road, especially if they're losing cognition, they're declining, because you're going to need to know this. So that's one way you can help them, is to sit down with them and talk. And sometimes if they know your heart's in the right place and you're doing it for them and for their benefit. Yesterday we spoke about taking the car keys away. This is a tough thing. It's kind of just right there with telling you where all of their money's at. It's a tough thing because they don't want to do it. It's giving up freedom, giving up independence. And
but it could also too be life threatening, because if they're not maintaining, for example, their checkbook, and they're not paying their bills, they're not paying their utility bills, it's going to get really cold here tonight, and I'd hate to be without the heat. And if you don't see them every day and you don't know that their heat's not working, that could be life threatening.
So if you see them declining, you as one of the kids will just have to intervene. And if you can do it with, if you've got siblings, if all of you can talk to your parents, not in a confrontational way, but in a loving way, to let them know that you want to help, you really do want to help, and this is what your plans are, and ask them what they would like. And if they can have a conversation, it's a tough conversation. Mom, if you do decline more, what do you want to happen? Do you want to stay here at home? Do you want caregivers to come in? Do you, talk about the pros and cons of that?
The way the conversation goes is obviously going to depend on the family dynamics, but
right.
the more peaceful it can be, the better it is. But you need to plan. You need to have these discussions with them, because at any moment they could have a health crisis and be headed off to the emergency room. And from what happens from that point on, it could change everybody's day and somebody's life.
If their cognitive ability is declining, it's important to get on top of this and have these conversations as soon as possible. You know, there's a real good article, and before we move on to the next one, this has got to do with cognition. There's a real good article that Jennifer put up on our Facebook page, and it was titled, this looks like a news clip. It says, "How can the sound of music help people with dementia?" It says it's just one of the things that helps people bring the memories back to Burl as part of a specially produced film of her own featuring people and songs from her past. So, you know, that's one way you can help people that are declining. And one of our questions here was, you know, asking how this worked, or, you know, sound like they may be questioning that. And I'm certainly not a doctor or a researcher, but I've seen several articles on this that, and I've seen it in real life that, you know, it seems like there's a certain part of the brain that you know relates to music and relates to music of the past or sounds from the past.
And memories, the memories tied to that music and that point in life when you heard that music.
Yeah, and there was a video on here the other day that Jennifer put up, you know, where people in nursing homes were listening to, you know, Frank Sinatra and you know, bands of that era, singers, big bands and singers of that era, and they were just getting it, you know. It's like they were singing along. They may not be able to say anything much, just a word or two, but they were singing along the words of that song. Yeah, because it was in their memory banks. It was way back there, so they were responding to it.
One of the big things around here is that nursing homes will have activities on a regular basis. And one of the big things around here is the gentleman that comes in, and he is Elvis. Looks a lot like him, sounds a lot like him, moves like him, and the residents just love him. Because it stimulates that part of the brain, brings back those memories. And
I knew Elvis wasn't dead. I mean,
well, that's it.
Here he is.
Elvis is back in the
building. He's back. So Elvis is back. So yeah, and people do relate to this. So another one is
I think this one right here, keeping up with medical records.
Oh yeah, that relates to it as well.
Absolutely.
Keeping up with medical records. So and some of you have experienced this, and it's scary. You know, you stop by Mom's house on the way to work in the morning, ask her if she's taking her meds, and she may not know. And you may even have the meds set out in a pill box, and you know, maybe she's taking 2 of one and none of the other, or whatever. So it's important to keep up with the medications. It's important to keep up with the medical records. Because before we leave the medications thing, you know, there is technology comes to the rescue a lot anymore. I saw a piece of high-tech medical equipment the other day, and you know, we're all familiar with these plastic pill boxes, but this one is this like a round thing, and you had the pills scattered all around it, and when it came 2 o'clock, when it came time for him to take the pills, the little thing would flop up and a thing would go off, a beeper would go off, and the only ones they could get to were just the ones in that particular little cubby hole there, and they would take that, and if they didn't take it, if they didn't respond to the beep, you could program it where you, the kid, get a text or a message that, hey, Mom's not taking her 2 o'clock medicine. So then you could call her up and say, Mom, go in there and take your medicine. So technology's coming up with a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that was just the prescription. What about medical records? I know you did a lot in that regard.
Yes. You know, one of the things for me was I created a notebook, so every time I went to the doctor, I had the information in there that I needed. And each time that we went to the different doctors, I would get, they call it different things, a daily report, a face sheet. It is basically a breakdown of the vital statistics that were recorded in the office that day and what the doctor prescribed, if there were any changes, and what, you know, anything pertinent to the medical diagnosis. and records of the doctor. It's usually on one page, so I just 3-hole punch that and put it in her notebook. So next time we went to the doctor, I could look at it, pull it out, and say, "Oh, this changed," or "How about that? Do we need to look at this again?" So it's very important for you. But for you to have access to that now, you need to have the authorization, have your loved one sign HIPAA authorization so you can get their medical records, talk to their physicians. And you usually do that when you take them in. So make sure you have that they write it down so you can get those records and talk to their doctors.
Okay, here's a question. How do you manage complete safety of a loved one at night when you need to sleep? This is obviously a family caregiver that's living with their mom or dad moved in, and that's tough as well. That's where maybe some technology would help as well, because you got to sleep, and some of you are fortunate enough that your parents that you're caring for, they just go to bed, go to sleep, and they're there till morning. Maybe they just will naturally sleep well, or maybe it can be that physically they can't get out of bed until someone moves them. But some of you have parents with Alzheimer's, and they wander. They get up in the middle of the night and roam, and that is tough. I know I met a lady a few years ago that when I saw her, she looked rough, and I talked to her and said, what's going on? And her mom had Alzheimer's, and she was in the wandering stage, and this poor lady, the only way she knew, and she had to work, the only way she knew to guard the front door and sleep was to physically lay down in the doorway. I mean, her body was in front of the door, across the doorway. That's where she slept. I mean, how many nights in a row could you sleep on the floor in front of the door? I don't know, but and it was obviously taking a toll on her. So that was her secret, as it was. But yeah, this is a tough one. I know there's technology that you can set things up that beep if someone gets out of bed or tries to get out of the front door, and you might check with your home care provider to see if they have any ideas, or they can make suggestions along this line.
So we're in a rural community, and I co-facilitate the Alzheimer's support group here. One of the caregivers was having this exact problem, and she was going to a local physician, primary care physician, and everybody in the group suggested she go see a geriatric physician, which she did, and she took her loved one, and they did a pretty big change on the medications, and now her loved one is sleeping through the night. He is talking. He's even asking questions, which he hadn't done for quite a while. So in this case, it was a change in the medication. So you might look at that.
Okay, and I think that's probably about all we have time for today. So we're going to wrap it up there. Please send in your questions and comments. And like we often say, your fellow family caregivers are on this side, and some of them are where you were several months ago. So any tips that you would have, they haven't figured it out yet. They're just starting. So any tips you have would be greatly appreciated. So leave words of encouragement and helpful comments on the Facebook page and on our blog site, and that will benefit them greatly. I know they'll appreciate it, and we do too. So thanks for all you do. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day, and we'll see you again on Help Me Help Mama Livecast.